This episode of The Deck Investigates is brought to you by the CarMax 30-day money-back guarantee. Because finding the perfect car for your busy life is easy when you can browse tens of thousands of cars online. With 360-degree photos and detailed comparison tools, when you've found your perfect match, you can buy with confidence that it's the right car for you, knowing that it's backed by CarMax's 30-day money-back guarantee up to 1,500 miles. Start shopping now and learn more at CarMax.com. CarMax, car buying reimagined.
It was a pitch-black night in the high desert. Sheriff's Deputy Billy Cox drove over the park and ride in Palmdale. Something very wrong around that bright blue Mustang. A woman's left leg and bare foot were hanging out of the door. L.A. County Homicide Detective Richard Longshore was sound asleep when he got the call.
There are cases that you will take home with you at night, and that will last till the end of your life.
I'm Keith Morrison, and this is The Girl in the Blue Mustang, a podcast from Dateline.
Listen now for free wherever you get your podcasts.
As of last summer, authorities have Ron Hulse's DNA swab. They agreed to do a direct comparison test against the partial male profile found on Darlene's blouse. Not because Ron is a suspect, but because he's her husband. If that DNA belongs to Ron, then it actually means the profile is kinda useless. Maybe it was from their hug goodbye that morning when he went to work, in which case it means that we need to start testing other items while we still can to get a suspect sample. And that sample might be right there in the slides from her autopsy if they still have them. If they did a comparison between Ron's swab and the semen, they could figure out pretty quickly if it did in fact belong to Ron. But we asked Prosecutor Chipman if that has been done yet, and he said no. It was the first of many no's that we'd hear. This is episode 15, next in the investigation. We also asked Chipman if there were any immediate plans to get a swab from Kenneth McCune Jr., and he said he still needed to write an affidavit to get a court order to do so.
So what are you waiting for?
I'm waiting for my people. I got work to cut out. I got work to do. Maybe you're too early.
It's been almost 40 years.
I feel like you could put that clip on repeat, and it was every conversation we had with Nelson. When Emily met with him in August, the plan was to get some comparison testing done in October. Then the goal was by Thanksgiving, then by the end of the year for sure. We haven't gotten any updates since then. When we push, Nelson gives us the same story he's always given Kristen. They're busy. New cases come in every day. No doubt, I don't think he's bluffing, but I also don't think that's an excuse.
What keeps you motivated in wanting to solve this case?
Justice. That's the romantic way of saying it, but it's also, there's ego. I want to win, but I want that family to have some kind of closure. I never liked that term or that concept, don't even understand what it means.
Justice, ego, and closure for the family. If his ego wants a win, it seems like a softball. We're at the point where the only thing that's left to do is test the freaking evidence. It's the only thing I personally can't do. Nelson's lack of urgency around this has been driving us bonkers for the last year. And please keep in mind, the frustration that we've felt is just a fraction of what Darlene's family has lived with for nearly 4 decades.
If I put myself in their shoes, and we're talking to the state police, what I want to say is, I get that new crimes are popping up every day, but if we've got something so viable and we've been waiting 38 years, when do we get to cut to the front of the line? And I understand the frustration.
I understand the frustration.
Right, and I'm not saying there's an easy fix or something. It's disheartening.
Nelson said he's never thought about it that way. About Darlene's case getting to cut the line because she and her family have already waited so long. It seems like the most natural conclusion to me, which is why I think bringing in fresh perspectives can be good sometimes. So what now? The to-do list for authorities is short and simple. Number 1, compare the unknown sample to Ron. If it ends up being his DNA, go back to the underwear, to the sexual assault kit, other pieces of evidence, and do more retesting to get a new sample. Number 2, if it's not Ron, or once another sample is obtained, start going down the list and testing it against people known in the investigation, both then and now. Now, for me and Emily, our to-do list is a little less straightforward. I mean, really, our to-do list comes to a grinding halt the second comparison testing is done and Darlene's killer is identified. But until then, we want to keep looking at all the things that still don't make sense, and we want to keep pulling at little threads that unravel into something bigger. And there are all of these little threads, some that lead nowhere, some that might mean nothing, but we don't know unless we pick and pull them apart. Here's an example. Back around the holidays, as Emily and I were in the thick of writing this series, we kept going back through old reports to fact-check and also to make sure that we hadn't missed anything. And almost every time we did, we came up with another person worth investigating. Like, do you remember the Argus appliance guy, Lee? I told you about him back in episode 6. Ron Hulse said that he was going to do a house call on the day that Darlene was abducted. Ron told police in one of his original interviews that Lee was supposed to stop by that morning to check out a faulty refrigerator light.
We called him, and he was supposed to come down shortly then and fix it. As it turned out, he was on his way at 9:30 that morning, drove by the road and said, well, I promised I'd call first, so he kept driving and went into Rochester.
Police didn't pose any follow-up questions about this, but I have a few. First, we know Darlene was about